Quilt asks, is there a chance you'll be adding a thrust-type weapon, like a spear or a rapier? So, a thrust-type weapon was actually on my original list when I was first proposing the array of weapons that could exist in State of Decay 2. Thrust-type weapons were absolutely a part of that proposal, because I really liked the idea, right? It seems like it's a perfectly natural way to fight zombies, is to jab them in the face from far away. And I think it was highlighted in the Zombie Survival Guide as like, this is the ideal weapon for zombies, is to be able to poke them in the head from far away. And so that was included on the list, but when we actually started dealing with the logistical nightmare of trying to make a video game happen, we actually had to cut the weapon variety so deeply, we couldn't even ship with heavy weapons originally. And so we only shipped with 2 classes of weapons, if you don't count close combat weapons. And that was disappointing for everybody on the team. We really wanted to ship with at least the array of weapons available in the Year 1 Survival Edition, which was bladed weapons, blunt weapons, heavy weapons, and close combat weapons. And close combat weapons weren't handled as inventory items in State of Decay 1, but you did, in the Year 1 Survival Edition, we added animations where you would produce a knife out of some part of your body and stab zombies with it. And so we wanted to hit those same 4 weapons, and we couldn't on release. And so one of the sort of like, it almost felt like paying back debt when we released the Juggernaut Edition. We added heavy weapons back in because that brought us up to parity with State of Decay 1, which felt like at least the minimum that we should have hit anyway, right? And so we did that. That felt really good. But it was expensive. It's like, having the game know a wide variety of different things that a human character could do, depending on how they're equipped, depending on what skills they have, that costs something. And it costs something at runtime. And there's just, even though we're fairly unbounded when it comes to how much of your disk space we are allowed to take up. We're not unbounded completely, but people let us take up a lot of disk space if we want to. Runtime resources, how much memory that we use, that is more of a challenge. That doesn't get any better on our low spec machines over time. And so adding new stuff to the basic player character would be really tough in State of Decay 2. Not impossible, but we'd probably have to make a lot of other sacrifices and invest a lot in optimization in other places. It would be a very expensive and difficult thing to add in an environment where, if we could see like 19 other things we could add more cheaply, it's really easy to prioritize an idea like that very, very low down on the list. And so I doubt you'll ever see like a completely different combat style represented in State of Decay 2, but that doesn't mean you'll never see it in the franchise. We've got hopefully a lot of years ahead of us still in this franchise, and multiple iterations maybe, I don't know. I certainly hope this franchise lasts for a very long time. I'm a huge fan of it. I don't have any control over that. Those are business decisions, and I don't even know anything beyond the fact that we're working on the next one. But so yeah, definitely not going to make any promises one way or the other. I like the idea though. I think it would be good if we did do that at some point. I just, I wanted it for State of Decay 2, didn't get it. So what I want has very little bearing on reality, because at the end of the day, we all have to deal with the logistical nightmare of trying to figure out how to make a game run on a machine and make a project finish under budget and come out on time, and we're already not good at any of those things, so wish us luck. Proxus, no, so launch day State of Decay 2 did have close combat weapons. That was a thing. It was a skill. We had them all in the game. State of Decay 1, when it first released, did not have close combat weapons, and they were added as a variant attack type, basically in the Year 1 Survival Edition, because it used to be in State of Decay 1, you would actually do like chorus line high kicks to fight zombies when you were unarmed, and it was absolutely silly. And so we replaced that with actually stabbing zombies with a knife, which feels like a more legitimate way to take a zombie down. And some of it came from just Foggy thinking, it would be weird if you were a zombie apocalypse survivor to go out into the world without a knife. If you note, on The Walking Dead, every character carries a knife with them at all times to stab zombies in the eye if they get suddenly ambushed. And so we felt like it made sense for our characters to also be doing that. And then in State of Decay 2, we decided to formalize that, make it actually a part of your inventory, let characters carry different ones. I actually had a different idea early on about how to handle close combat weapons. I didn't want them to be inventory items. I wanted them to be expressions of a character's skills and traits. And so the idea would be that if you look at your 5th skill, that talks about sort of what your trade is, right? And so I was thinking that it would be kind of cool if we had a couple of, default knives that characters would use, but then have, if you're an electrician, you get a screwdriver, or if you're a doctor, you get a scalpel, or if you're an artist, you get some kind of like a chisel, maybe, or something like that. I don't know. There's just a lot of different things. I liked the idea of having someone's close combat weapon be an expression of something greater about their character. But we ended up, it wasn't my decision. We ended up going with inventory items instead, and slightly awkward inventory items, because the problem was we couldn't leave a character without a close combat weapon, because if they don't have a close combat weapon, they can't fight a zombie. Like basically, because your regular weapon can break and leave you to resort to your close combat weapon, that means we can't leave you without a close combat weapon, because then we have to come up with another set of combat animations. And that would be just even more stuff that we couldn't afford to do. So we're like, okay, they have to have a close combat weapon at all times. And so my solution to that was, let's make it not an item. Let's just make it an intrinsic aspect of the character. They can never be without it. And then, we can just, always depict them having this thing and have it mean something else about their character. But, like I said, wasn't my call. Ended up making an inventory item, but an awkward inventory item that you can never vacate its slot. Instead, you can only replace it with another one, which creates some weird user experience headaches in the inventory that I'm not a fan of, that I've never been a fan of. But we're there. We're kind of committed. It works the way it works now. We a ton of our bounties are about getting these things, so we can't change it. But anyway, so that's the history of that, if you were curious. So Cogs is saying that getting disarmed should be a thing. So I mean, you can get breaking your weapon does disarm you. So we'd have kind of a version of getting disarmed. It is not the same as an enemy doing it to you. I think that if it was easier, because our inventory system works in such a way where when you pick something up off the ground, it goes into your backpack, doesn't go into your hand. That's a little bit weird. I think if we had built the UX slightly differently so that you could just slot a weapon directly into your hand from the ground, maybe just as a hold action or something, that would be fine. I don't know, because one thing people did originally assume we wanted, people who were sort of working on implementing our inventory UX. A lot of them were assuming that, if I have an empty equip slot for a primary weapon or a ranged weapon or something, then when I pick one up off the ground, it should automatically go into that slot. It should automatically equip. And we had to fight actually pretty hard against that, because there's so many scenarios where you actually want to not have a weapon equipped. Specifically, if you're a close combat character, you don't want to have to pick up a heavy weapon off the ground for your friend and then have it automatically get slotted, and now you don't get to use all of your best attacks. That would be silly. You don't want to do that. And so even though, in a lot of games it makes sense to auto slot a weapon when you pick it up because you always want a weapon, in the case of State of Decay 2, having full control over your inventory is actually much more important. And so it was actually a similar attitude that led to the way that the trunk inventory works, where you're just automatically zapping around from square to square to square, which is very annoying to me, because what I want as a player in a State of Decay 2 style game is absolute control over my inventory. And so having the game make assumptions about what I want and just do things for me annoys the heck out of me, because I'm no. One of the most important things I do in this game is controlling what I'm holding and what I'm carrying. And I don't want you to do things that mess with that. I want you to just give me the control and let me handle it. I guess that was a viewer question. Let's do an end screen. There's the next viewer question, I guess, if it ever exists. And there's the last one. And I guess we'll go.